Welcome, everybody.
Hey, hey. Good boy, Tucker.
Work smarter where you want.
This is learning at its most fun.
Good morning to some, good afternoon to others. Thank you for joining us for yet another new partner spotlight. My name is Austin Johnson, your host today, trainer and subject matter expert here at Redtail Technology. And today we have joining us is PlantechHub. We're going to be talking about how to unleash the power of the one-page financial plan. And so we know that financial planning software hasn't really evolved to meet the changing digital expectations of today. And so today we just wanted to share some best practices on some faster quality plan creation that is engaging to present with every client and that they can easily understand. So PlantechHub is a modern financial planning software for clients and prospects of any age or financial position, and it's made for both the independent advisor and enterprise institutions. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our co-presenter today, Chad from PlantechHub. Chad, good morning.
Thanks, Austin. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, man. Thanks again for spending some time with us today and showing us how to unleash the power of a one-page financial plan. Before we get to the demonstration today, just wanted to get to know a little bit about you. So Chad, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into the industry?
Yeah, certainly. It's, it started about 20 years ago. When I graduated college, I answered a job ad for someone looking for kind of a math whiz, and it ended up being Money Guide Pro. And so I was actually originally hired as a tester and on the technology department, and I was the first support person for Money Guide Pro, as well as the first salesperson for Money Guide Pro, and ran their sales department up until about 2014. Since then, I've worked with Advicent on their financial planning products, as well as with Advisor right before the Orion acquisition of that product. After that, I decided that I kind of had some things in mind that I felt were kind of necessary for advisors to have moving forward, and that's when we decided to create PlantechHub.
All right, awesome. Well, take us through that decision. You work with Money Guide Pro and Advicent, some of the big juggernauts as far as financial planning tools in the industry. So how did your company come to be?
Yeah, so, in kind of working with a lot of different types of institutions, as well as independent advisors, one-man shops to, medium, large RAs, and, and really when I mean a lot of different types of institutions, custodians, banks, insurance companies, it really runs the gamut when you're a financial planning software like Money Guide, and you work with a bunch of different types of technologies. We started kind of seeing the same deficits over and over again, or we would kind of go in, no matter what technology I was working for, we would kind of go in with kind of hearing the same type of things that they were looking for. And so that's when we decided to kind of create what we did. And, in fact, I think, Austin, if it's appropriate for me to go ahead and jump into the PowerPoint and go to that, where we thought that opportunity was. But
yeah, absolutely.
We, really kind of felt like there was an opportunity to really make the plan creation process much faster and much more intuitive. We wanted presentations to be much more engaging. We kind of live in a world now where presentations are kind of, hey, look at this paper report. And we wanted to create a process that was much more engaging. We wanted to create a client portal that was a little bit more scaled for those that need it, as well as kind of gave it the ability to be much more in depth for those plans that also need it. But more importantly, we also kind of wanted to not just be modern when it comes to digital interaction, but we wanted to be modern when it comes to being very interactive and very transparent when it comes to the execution of this. Again, all of our vision wraps into a very trackable digital experience, because the end game is to not just have the planning experience, but to be able to know how successful the experience was, to be able to come up with metrics that allows us to track how we're doing, how our planning process is doing overall. And this is not just talking about for an institution. These should be capabilities for independent advisors as well.
Awesome stuff, Chad. Yeah, and I see there at the bottom, I see that from what ifs to what next. I think that's a lovely way of summarizing financial planning. Speaking of summarizing, if you could just give us real briefly, what do you feel is the main problem that your product solves for either the advisor or their client?
Yeah, so probably the biggest thing would be that we kind of live in a world where technology believes that to be more engaging, it has to be faster and simpler. We felt there was an opportunity to add more engagement by giving the advisor as well as the client more to do in the process. So I would say, PlantechHub Hub is much more hands-on. We're much more into the interactivity in the dance between the advisor and the client, and again, creating those points of interactivity is what allows us to then track it and to see what is being successful and not being successful.
Okay, so it sounds like PlantechHub gives a little bit more of a deeper and interactive experience than some of the other financial planning tools out there. So we'd love to see a little bit more if you could give us a demo about what PlantechHub does.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'll do is that I will kind of show you guys what PlantechHub does, how we kind of go about it. At the end of the day, it's a very simplistic kind of idea of where it's built from. We just have built a lot of power into it. Additionally, I will also talk about the integration with Redtail and not just what is being integrated, because we're new to this process. Redtail was our first integration. We want to be very aggressive with integrations as we move forward. But the first things first was creating a framework that allowed us to kind of innovate on how even integrations were being used. So those would be some of the things I'll get an opportunity to show you. It's just not just the integration, but how we've done some special things around multiple sources, how we record everything digitally within a history module, and also how part of our integrations is not having a break in continuity of what we are recording in the history module, so that the story of the plan kind of remains very straightforward and linear. So with that being said, what I'll do is kind of jump out to our website real quick. This is our homepage here at PlantechHub.com. You'll find that our software, I mentioned about transparency. We really don't hide anything. We have one of the things we'll talk about at the end is a free trial. We encourage you to use it. There's no limitations to the free trial. It is the actual software. But everything that's in our software, everything from our process to the types of numbers and visuals that we use, to the situations that we handle, we put everything out here on our sleeve. So definitely come to our website if you get an opportunity. We are a very small shop. I consider us, call ourselves kind of a garage band, but more so like Green Day or Rush. We really make a lot of noise. And, the three of us that are building the technology and supporting it, we really do feel like this is a special piece of technology in how you can improve that process with your clients. So let's go ahead and jump over here into sign in. And I'm just simply going to sign in. And it takes me to a page automatically that's on a client list. We've gone through a lot of work and used our experience to really make the software adaptable to working with other individuals. So if you're working with other team members or whether it be third-party professionals, you have the ability to not just see your clients, but really to see all their clients. And it'll depend upon what you can see and what you can do will depend upon the permissioning that was given to you. But what we should do now is we'll go ahead and focus inside of one client that we've entered into the system. And this is Ben and Beth accumulating. Now, when inside of our free trial, we actually have 3 demo cases in our free trial. Ben and Beth are one of them. The other 2 are Amy, the millennial, and Carlos and Christy Highworth, which are a little bit older with a bunch more money. But the most complex plan that we have in here, which is the one I want to show you, is Ben and Beth. When I go into Ben and Beth's plan, which I go into their suggested actions, the reason why that arrow was there is because I am currently suggesting actions to them. And that's why the arrow was presented there, and which is why it was given to me the ability to jump to that page if I want to. So I've gone into Ben and Beth, and what I really wanted to get across to everybody was really the simplicity of how to present a plan. In that we don't need to present investments and present insurance and present these different types of parts of the plan and kind of go through story by story by story, never really bringing it all together. The one-page financial plan, which is what we're looking at right now, is bringing the entire plan together where the advisor can completely control the metrics as well as the visuals, as well as the stress testers. So if we look at this plan, the top half are our results. Again, we have some metrics here, completely customizable. I could have none, or I could have 20 up here. I could have metrics and everything from about our taxes to our current ratio, different types of ratio analysis to how our savings are going. But we could bring up any different type of ratio up here that helps us tell the story of this plan better. Visually, we also have the ability to tell the story of the plan by how we're looking at the plan. So if I wanted to kind of look at where we're spending money, or if I wanted to look at the the income and distribution breakdown of how we're using money from our investment assets and our income throughout the entire plan, if I wanted to kind of hone in on the investment details, I have the ability to do so. You'll see here, we also have the ability to interact with this graph. So you'll notice that there's this button up here called timeline. And this is a perfect example of why timeline is important. I can go into timeline and let's focus this particular graph on the first 5 years. And that way I can see more of that detail there because it rescales the conversation to make that easier for us. So really what we're looking at is the results of these different actions down here. So I'll go back here to the entire plan. And let's go back to our basic results, which we're comparing our net worth as well as our expense need and what we were able to fund it throughout time. And what we see here is that we were able to apply these 6 suggestions. And so I can turn them on and off at will, and I can decide what we want to change. One change to this retirement asset may actually be 2 things, such as we're changing the allocation as well as changing the percentage of contributions. And I click on refresh. I can do this in any order. I can turn on as many as I want or turn them off. Again, the point of this particular methodology is that we can have a conversation where we can show them the value of each individual decision on its own merits and not all of them together. We can see here that we had extra net worth. We were able to fund a few extra goals because of this. Now, if I really want to have some success here, let's say I implement all of them and I bring all of them into the plan here. And I'm able to see that not only was I able to complete all of my goals, my net worth is higher, my funding rate is 100%, which is using a constant return, constant inflation, and Monte Carlo is success rate. So our Monte Carlo looks good as well. And then I also brought in an extra metric of the effective tax rate because I know that's something that my client is sensitive to. So we can just leave this as that. But if we wanted to, we could also put in here what if considerations. These are things that we cannot control typically, such as there's returns different on our investments. We lose employment income. There are cuts to Social Security. There's something happens to Adam tomorrow. So what if something happens to Adam tomorrow and we don't have this life insurance policy to cover it? We can see it having a huge effect on the results of the plan. And so it's incredibly easy to make very simple trade-off questions in here where we can see the individual benefits. But when we talk about presenting a plan, we actually want to go deeper than that if possible. So let's say that this is just simply presenting what our suggestions are. We're suggesting that we take these particular 6 actions to the plan. We've thrown these what ifs over here to help us validate what the suggestions are. Now, what we may want to do is come over to the what if workshop. And inside the what if workshop, I can come in here and say, you know what, let's come in here and I'm going to reset this entire plan. So we're putting it to 0, and then I'm going to copy my suggested actions over. So I just copied suggested actions over, and it's going to copy all of them and turn them on. An easy way to bypass that is just come back here, turn it off, hit refresh, and then we can go back into edit and see that they're all difference between turned on and turned off. But now we have the ability to change any variable we want. So if we're in the middle of a presentation and trying to show this to our clients, we can say, well, I know you said that why are we doing appreciation 70? Let's look what happens if we use a different portfolio. Let's look what happens if we choose a different percentage of income or even a different timing methodology of when this comes in. There is no limitation to what you can change in this plan. We have really gone to the nines to make sure that you can really be very, very specific to what it is that you want to say and very granular to the client if the plan calls for that. So now that we kind of talked a little bit about how we are presenting the plan, again, kind of working with the one-page financial plan that we call suggested actions, maybe we use a workshop if needed. How did we get to this point? Well, we started here on this list in which we clicked on add a new client. Very shortly, and what that does is bring us into an onboarding process, very, very quick and simple, but allows us to create this onboarding process or create the shell of a plan very, very quickly. That's one way. We also have a new button coming over here to the right called invite new client. And you're going to be able to invite via email, have the client register themselves, and you can determine whether you want them in data gathering mode or even in do it yourself mode. And you can determine that from the invite if you want to. So if we brought in here a client, and what I wanted to show you is how we kind of begun the plan in the first place. What we did is that we started filling in this profile. This is a very, very complex plan. There's a lot of goals here because we've got a bunch of kids. There's a lot of things they want. I would argue that this is actually the typical family, but there's a lot of goals that we could have here to work with. They got a bunch of assets, some investments, some real assets, and the debts associated, a bunch of different expenses. This is a big whopping plan, as you saw, because even our suggestions, we had a lot of suggestions around that. Again, it doesn't have to be like this. We could come back here and look at a more simpler plan, which is just looking at, this is Amy who just graduated from college. She's got a bunch of expenses that she has to find and what she's spending money on, but she has very few assets. She still needs advice. But what we're traditionally and typically going to see are clients that look a little bit like Carlos and Christy Highworth. And in Carlos and Christy, this is where we come in and kind of have the capability of coming over here and saying, we only want a few goals, just what we need to be able to move forward. And again, we have a few assets or some assets here, as well as some expenses. But notice here that we didn't put in all of their expenses. We just kept it at a very base annual living expense. And I think that this is really kind of the neat thing about the system is that if you want to spend 5 minutes to create a very, very basic plan because it helps facilitate that conversation in just a few minutes, you can just simply put in a goal and put in a person, put in an expense need. But if you want to also use that exact same structure to create a much more sophisticated planning process, you can do that here inside of PlantechHub. And when I talk about the sophistication of it, it's not just about giving you the ability to say, oh, we live in Rhode Island today, but we're going to move a couple times throughout our life, giving them that kind of capability. Or say you're working with a young person and you're talking about their income. Well, it's very frustrating when they say, yeah, I make about $50,000 a year now, and that planning software is making that $50,000 assumption throughout their entire plan, rather than giving them the ability to add some new income sources or a stream of how change of their salary is going to be in the future. So we've really gone to a lot of detail to make it possible to make this very specific to the client that we're working with. You can see everything here is very high level, but if we want to, we can click on details. Anytime that we see results, we see details. And details is giving you a full breakdown, a full audit trail of all of the cash flow as well as the net worth here within the system. And I think kind of a really neat feature here is that you even have the ability to download this to a CSV file. You can put it in Google Sheets or put it into an Excel spreadsheet. I would encourage you, if you happen to come up with some metrics or come up with visuals that you like, let us know so that we can implement it here ourselves inside the system. One of the things that I think is kind of important to recognize is that as you're building this particular current plan, you can come back to it at any point in time. Come over here, start building suggestions and scenarios that we're getting ready to talk about, and you can come back here and make any changes you want. Again, any changes you're making to the system are recorded here in history, and we'll get to that in just a second. But once we've created the current plan, we just simply go into scenarios. And inside scenarios is where we can go in and start building these plans. It looks exactly like our other plan. So what I'm going to do is go back into Ben and Beth. Let's go into their scenarios page where we built those recommendations that we viewed earlier. And what I did is I said, let's add a new scenario. I added a new scenario. It's completely empty. And I said, you know what? I want to give them some advice around their investment assets. So their employer-sponsored plans they have. So investment assets, employer-sponsored plan, and I want to talk about their 401k. Now, it brings up this box where if I want to, all I have to do is say, what do I want to talk about? Let's say I just want to talk about investments, and I click on Save. What I've done is I've created that action box. And that action box, I can come in and do anything to it I want. Even if I want to create a custom portfolio on the fly, I can easily do so if I want to. Again, it's probably a lot easier just to click on the portfolio or even the target portfolio if we happen to be going through an investment preference process with this guy or not. But let's click on the portfolio here. And we can say, what if we go to allocation 80 and we click on save? Well, again, we just do this over and over again. Again, we can also change the real estate that we're using for this box, because this 401k, we may not just want to talk about the allocation. We may want to also talk about the pre-tax contributions. We may want to also talk about Roth additions, even though we weren't making any Roth additions before. So again, you're going to be able to determine what you want to be in your box, because real estate, of course, is precious. And as we add more boxes, it's going to take up more space. So we don't want to have a whole bunch of variables and stuff there that are not necessary to the conversation. So one of the things I want to point out is that there's a lot of different ways you can use this. I use this to build recommendations, and I build that one plan of recommendations that we talked about. I can also do an early death analysis, and early death analysis is more than just the what if something happens to you. It can be about what's going to happen to income, what goals change, what assets change. Many things in their life are going to change if there's an early death, and you have the capability to really use your advisor talents by modeling out that scenario and having the capability of doing so. We want to retire early to the beach. I guarantee you that most of you, if you get that question, you're just simply copying the client. And you're saying, hey, let's copy the client, or let's start a new client, if you're even going that far. Because retiring early to the beach means that we are not just retiring at a different time, but we may be making different additions to our assets to achieve that goal. We may be selling our house now locally and buying a new house in the future, both of which were not happening in our previous plan. So one of the great things about PlantechHub is our ability to dream. And we don't have to shy away from our ability to dream at all. We can ask any questions about taking sabbaticals. What if my kids go to private school? Can we afford a larger house? Whatever it is that we want to dream, you should have the ability to create the action boxes here to model that scenario, and we can have that conversation with our client. Now, one of the last things I just want to point out while we're on this page is, let's say we're here on recommendations. I made a comment before that just about everything that's happening in your plan is being recorded inside of history. So our creation of this client, the additions of the assets, let's say we invite the client to join in, all of that is being recorded. So even also what ends up happening to advice itself. So notice here that we have added a 401k, and let's say I want to adopt it. I would click on adopt action, and it would say, hey, we're going to remove this from this list, and we're going to update your current plan. Of course, it would also keep it here inside of history. Again, every single plan keeps a history where access, what's been added, who added it, who changed what suggestions were made, what happens to those suggestions over time, all of it's being recorded here inside of the digital history. I made comment about access. There's also a module here called access, and this is where you do have the ability to kind of set up your client at any point in time. You also have the ability to customize anything you saw here. So anything from what graphs are being used to the metrics, even down to what color you want this to be, you can use hex codes and you can change everything to completely match your clients. And if I apologize if we lose power here in a second. We're actually going through a very bad storm here right now. And you'll notice that anytime you change something, you have this trash icon. Again, you can't hurt anything. So anytime you want to change something, just change it. And you can always just go back to what you were by clicking that trash icon. And everything can go back to exactly the way it was. So you can kind of play with what metrics you want to use, what colors you're using throughout the system, what graphs you're using, what colors are being used inside the graphs. You have that capability to do all of that. And it's a lot of power that allows you to make this experience much more, not just specific to the client, but makes it much more specific to your firm and how you're offering that planning process. Now, I wanted to close here today by talking about the integration itself. You'll notice here that I have built this plan. And when I built this plan for this client, I brought in a few things here into the plan itself. I don't have this asset here. So what I want to do is I want to come down into here. I'm going to go to plan integration. So, well, just first things first, you have the ability to set up an advisor integration. And what I've done is I've added Redtail. I came in and I said, I want to add a CRM and I want to add Redtail, and I put in my credentials. Once I've done that, I have the ability to use planned integrations. And inside planned integration, what I'm going to do is just simply say, I want to add an integration. I'm going to say Redtail is the partner, and I'm going to look for Ben. And I'm just going to put in his first name and click on search. And I see Ben here, and I click on save. Now, what it's done is that it brought this element into the plan and said, hey, we have something that we do want to update. It's going to automatically update every 24 hours, or we can click on refresh integration. And when we click on refresh integration, what it's going to do is bring in our different types of investments here. So you'll notice here that I have a couple of different investments here for Ben. Now, what I have the ability to do is to add them or link them to existing assets. So I already had XYZ financial. And what I want to do is link it to my existing asset. This is one of the special things that we do here into the system, is that we allow you to take something and then bring it in and say, this was actually something else. So that way you can use prospecting, and you can actually use prospecting and then use the integration later. The other thing that we did is that we made it so that not everything has to come from the exact same source, so that you can bring in integrations from your portfolio management software. You can bring it in from your CRM, from your custodian, from your data gathering software, whatever it is. We may want to bring it in, and then you can actually say, I'm updating this asset from the portfolio management software, but let's say that that's not working well. Then we come back here and say, you know what, I can also get this from Redtail if I want to. So I turn it off from the portfolio management software and bring it in via Redtail. That's another great advantage of how our integration works. Now, I don't want to go far past our time here. Austin, I think that would probably preclude, really what we wanted to talk about in general, along with the integration. More than happy to take questions if anybody happens to have any.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. It's kind of interesting how you can balance the simplicity of it with all of the customizability. Just such a powerful platform. So yes, like Chad mentioned, everybody, go ahead and head to the Q&A section here, and we are going to take some questions live. The first one here comes from Bragg. They ask, in retirement, do you have the option to change where the income comes from? Most plans default to a non-qualified accounts. Any insight for us on that?
Yes. Well, it's I can tell you that I don't think I probably handle it the way you want it handled right this second. We do have a feature coming that will allow it to be handled. So just to kind of say, I think what the question is about is the distribution of the assets. And right now, whenever we're trying to handle an expense or a need of money, we're trying to take our guess of what is the most tax efficient way of being able to do it. Now, whether we're true or whether we're correct or not in our assumption of tax efficiency, the fact is that we want you to do what you want to do. And that's why it's not here now, but there soon will be coming a box down here that says strategy. And so it'll look just like these, but empty. It'll give you strategy, and you can kind of go in just like these, and there'll be strategies listed over here on the right-hand side. One of them will be the order of assets that are spent. So, Bragg, I hope that answers your question.
All right, yeah, definitely, Bragg. If you need more clarification, feel free to throw another question in there. We're going to move on to the next one, though. This question comes from Brittany. She asks, can my entire team use it or just me?
Oh, really good question. And in fact, this is something that we have put a lot of time and effort into, is how you guys work together as a team. And just to I want to make sure I answer the question fully and correctly. When we charge for the software, we charge just for advisors. So if there are 2 advisors on the team, it would be 2 licenses, but we do not charge for support staff. If compliant needs to have access, if operations needs to have access, as long as they're not advisors that are building it for clients, then we want them to have free access to the system. With that being said, inside of every light or every household, there is this access button. And not only can you invite clients, but you can also invite other professionals as well. And this is really just kind of one way of doing it. And what I'm going to do is just kind of jump into a different account that actually has a team associated to it. And one other thing too is that any advisor has the ability to create a team. And you can even do this in your free trial process, where you can kind of come in here and you have, notice that now my drop down, I now have these team options here. And so I have team administration. And so I can then invite other advisors or invite other staff. The difference between those two is advisors can have clients under their IDs, whereas other staff cannot have clients under their IDs, but they can access advisors' clients under their IDs to help work with them. So what you can do is that you can invite your entire team. Even you can even promote other team members to team managers. Again, I think we did a really great job of making it easy to not just kind of play around with the system with navigation. So like, for instance, I want to remove Bob. I remove him. I didn't remove him from the team. I just removed his access as a team manager. So it's the other thing I do is that I can go into Bob and I can say, in fact, I'll just delete these real quick. That's how easy it is. But I can go into Bob and I can say, you know what, Bob is helping our entire team out. And so we want Bob to be able to read everybody's system. So he can't change anything. Sorry, a lot of thunder in the background. He can't change anything, but he can go in and read it. But specifically, there is an individual, Andy, and Andy really needs his help big time. So with Andy, we're going to make it so that he can read and write. And then we're even kind of looking at changing it so that we can deny people access this way. But the whole idea is to make it so that even on a person by person basis, you can determine who can see the entire team or individuals. We don't just make the assumption that just because you're in a team that you can see everybody, because again, I want your team to not just be the people you work with in your firm. I want your team to be other third-party professionals that you work with. And again, you can control what they see and what they do with what they see. You even have the ability to control who you pay for and who you don't pay for. Again, other third parties, they may have free licensing from us as paraplanners, or maybe there are advisors that already have their own books of business and you invite them as a third-party staff. And again, control what they can see and what they do. You also have the ability to easily transfer plans. Excuse me. If I wanted to say, I wanted to take Mary Single and give her to Andy, and I'm going to say, let's transfer this over to Andy. Let's transfer this plan. Done. It's that fast. Or let's say that I'm firing Andy and we want to say, let's transfer all of these out of Andy because we are divorcing Andy right now. Or in fact, instead of this one was Andy brought with him. And so we take all of these, give them to Chad. Now I can just simply come up here to team members and I can click on remove from team. And I'm not deleting Andy's access. Andy still has access. He's just going to have to find some other way to pay for it. And, to access his team or something like after a trial. But again, you're not deleting Andy. You're just kind of deleting his ability to be a part of this team altogether. So I hope that answers your question. I know that's probably more than what you asked for, but again, this is one area where we really do shine, is the ability for you to set up teams, who can see what, who can do what, how to manage them. I think we've done this to a degree that I don't think any other planning software has ever thought about, in my opinion.
All right, Chad, we have another question here from Charles. Charles asks, is your platform friendly for an older advisor?
I believe yes. In fact, I would say that an older individual is exactly who I was building the software for in the very beginning. So like, for instance, one of my main thing that's always kind of guided me is how my dad uses technology. My dad signs on to Facebook, but he's not going to explore it in and out very well. And that really is what led to the concept of the one-page financial plan. The ability for me to say, you know what, I'm going to make it this just about the assimilation of information, nothing more. And I'll comment that in a second. But I made the experience so that, hey, I can make this so super simple for my dad, where if I'm going to access, I can invite my dad. Let's say this is his email address. I can invite my dad. And when I invite him, I can say, oh, I'm going to invite him to just be able to see that page and that page only. And so that when he logs in, he's only going to log into the suggested actions page and he won't be able to access any other page. If my dad is a little bit more sophisticated, I can go ahead and give them the ability to access the profile page, maybe even give them the ability to input profile information. And of course, there's varying other degrees here as well. As for the advisor, if the advisor is an older advisor, to me, this methodology is what's going to make more sense. The only downside to it is that it's different than what you're used to in planning software. But I think you'll find that as you kind of come over here and say, hey, you know what, let's delete this, let's delete a retirement goal. Well, if you're used to planning software, you're not used to being able to delete a retirement goal. Well, this is not letting me because I have suggestions out that my client is using off the retirement goal. But normally you don't have to run this plan using a retirement goal. I think you'll find that the actual inputs, how it works, is a lot more intuitive because it's not a system that's trying to create a lot of workarounds and jerry rigging to kind of accommodate for the lack of giving itself the ability to input those inputs.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. If you could you just give us a little bit more information about where we can go to find out more? I know you mentioned the free trial, but if somebody on the call wants to reach out and ask more detailed questions, who can they reach out to?
In fact, this will probably be a good time for me to go back to the PowerPoint we were in, because the one thing I like to do is, we're young and we are still trying to implement our vision. We think it is big. We think it is audacious, but at the same time, we're still doing things together. So, working together as a team, I think how we built integrations, how people do in-person presentations, these are all areas where we shine, in my opinion. Even in kind of talking about young individuals, DIYers, again, I would say that it's really more about an easier way to assimilate any information, whether it's a simple plan or a more complex one. But these are definitely one of the advantages they have over existing technologies. But areas where we're not a good fit is that, right now we just implemented Redtail. We're going to be working on other integrations, even more integrations with Redtail. We do not offer traditional reporting the way that you think of it. We're not trying to give a client a 100-page piece of paper. We are working on report generation. I guess you could print out if you wanted to, but more importantly, it can be done as PDFs. We do have print in there today, the ability to kind of print a one-pager take-home that you can definitely play with. I didn't show you, but that, and then also just really, if you're not interested in building a real plan, if you're just looking for how do I take the next step in the sale, then we're not going to be a good fit for you, because obviously, we have a lot of things in there and they're there so that you can do more with the client. So if you're not interested in doing more with them, then you're not going to appreciate the software. Same thing with if you're not interested in engaging the clients digitally, then the software is not really going to be a fantastic fit for you. You're not going to be able to take advantage of all that we have. I would urge you to take a look at it yourself and see if it's something that you would like to play with and use. Again, we do have a 30-day free trial. If you need more time, let me know. I am here to answer your questions. We have others here as well, but we do have an 800 number or an 833 number that's still toll free. That's 800-833-PlantechHub. We do have some sample cases in there that kind of run the range of what you can kind of play with and test. But again, I think we're pretty responsive, mainly because we're so new. We're not over inundated with advisors yet, and more than happy to listen to, not even just more than happy to, but really do want you to play with the software and tell us what you like and don't like about it. And I would say that that's your biggest opportunity here, is to play with something and then call me and tell me what I did wrong with it. And I'll sit there and take it. So definitely would urge you to do so.
Better be careful with that, Chad. I'm sure
I know.
Someone's going to take you up on that challenge.
I've made that mistake before, and I'll make it again.
All right, guys. Well, there is the information. Again, you can sign up for a 30-day free trial or reach out to Chad and his team at the either phone number or email address provided. Chad, thanks so much for your time. Thank you for introducing us to unleashing the power of a one-page financial plan. And again, for those of us still on the call, if you wanted more information, it's available for you here.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.